Welcome to Forum Fusion, the platform that promises to educate and entertain you with amazing discussions from me, Mercy McAfo, and my co-host,
Esperance. For those who watch the channel, Esperance and Sabbatical, thank you for having me, Mercy. And
it's
great
only a
pleasure to always
pleasure.
sit with you.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Today, I think we'll be talking about, children, parenting, and, the parental involvement in raising children in African households.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You've traveled a lot.
a little, because my traveling map, because I try to keep up.
Yeah.
Out of all the trips that I've done, they tell me that I've only seen 2% of the world. So
Oh my goodness.
after all the traveling, just imagine it tells you 2%. So
Yeah.
I can't say it's a lot, but
Ah.
yeah, I have traveled a bit.
So,
Yeah.
what has your experience been regarding the involvement of parents in raising their own children?
Well, I would say, in Africa, as in contrast to the rest of the world, things are done a little bit differently. Yes, some parents in some regions are more hands-on than in other regions, but in the end, I think, as most parents, they have the best interest of the children at heart. It's just that, they don't always know how to proceed or how to care or to raise their children. But again, I mean, you never really know. There's no book to tell you how to raise kids. And then, but in Africa again, parental involvements vary. It's varied because they're involved in raising the kids, but it's more like we want to raise you so that you can take care of us.
Okay.
Whereas, I don't know if you go the European way of raising children is that we want you to become independent so that you can do what we're doing for your children. It's a little
Do
bit
you
of
think
that.
that is the intention of parents when they plan to have children?
No, I don't think it is the intention of parents. But again, in Africa, you know, it's more like the perception. When you're a child, when you are being raised, you are raised to take care of the older
Okay.
people. Like of
The
those who are
elderly.
raising the elderly
Yeah.
and then the young ones. So they're raising you with that mindset that we will depend on you one day, which is not really wrong. But also, you want to make somebody self-reliant
Okay.
and not always indebted to you because you raised them in a sense. That's what I think. But again, it's something that has been going on for centuries, so we cannot just change it overnight. But I think we make such adults, that we will look up to, and when things don't always go according to plan, you get disappointed.
And what do you think are the how do I put this? I think when parents are not involved in raising their children, it's kind of causes, I can't say side effects.
You can, yeah, because I think it does. I think it really does. I'll give you an example. I don't know. We might have talked about it in another
Discussions.
discussion. What I saw in Ghana there, where parents were literally not parents but adults were literally taking kids and grooming them into professional beggars. These kids are basically being put in the streets to beg, and these are parents and these are legal guardians that are doing it to children. So, I think that is actually quite appalling because you're instrumentalizing your child to be beneficial to you. And in other parts of the continent as well, where you go, you see that parents are not involved at all. But I'm not saying that it's a regional thing. It depends also on community. Parents are really not involved. You find kids that are left, to fend for themselves, or are sent to be raised somewhere else, and there is no monitoring, there is no strict guidelines on how they are supposed to be raised. So they turn to become hooligans, in a sense. So you have beggars, hooligans, and all these things. So, and I think the problem that we have in society today in Africa is
Yeah.
that we are not empowering or raising children to an acceptable standards in the society. Some people don't even take it to heart to say that I'm raising a human being that I want to be integrated in society.
Yeah.
And you end up just raising, not raising basically, you letting a child raise themselves, and without role modeling, you both know what happens after.
And what about self-esteem? When you look at children that were raised by maybe adopted parents, grandparents, what do you think of the self-esteem that they grow up with? Because I find it a little bit worrying
Mhm.
with quite a couple of children that I've come across with that were raised by either grandparents or some adopted parents.
Mm. Well, I'm no expert on the subject, you know. I, I'm just going by observation. What I think is whether you're raised by your parents, grandparents, or whoever, the point is what kind of values are they trying to impress upon you? You know, like what values does your custodian or your legal guardian or your parents trying to impress upon you? But then now, I think as you speak of self-esteem, is it's always good to raise kids in a loving environment, in an environment where they know they are loved, but where they are also expected to turn a certain way, not
Yeah.
where they can just run over the house or do as they wish and then be free, in a sense. I'm not saying they should be restricted, but they have to know that there is a guideline. Again, speaking of guideline, and I tend to think, this is just me, I could be very wrong, I'm sorry, but I tend to think that when you leave your kids with your grandparents, yes, they love the kids, but they will not be as daring, to impress upon the kids what you want to. You know how grandparents are. They always point. Whatever you do or say, it's fine. And they don't really exert that authority. But I'm not saying all grandparents. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
in general, that's what I kind of get to see. Because I'll give you an example. I traveled to this country, which I will not name, and then the crime rate is quite high. And the statistics suggest that, it's the teenagers that are committing this crime. The majority are teenagers. And these teenagers are not coming from, some are coming from broken homes, and others are coming from, as we say, they're raised by single parents. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and others are raised by, like a distant relative, a grandmother, somebody who has not got a vested interest.
Yeah.
Well, they do have vested interest, but they probably maybe don't know how to apply themselves into molding what they want. And these are the children that are in the streets committing the crime, most cases. So you find that I'm not saying all children from a stable home are, sure to succeed or sure to be law-abiding citizen. The case of Ted Bundy in America, who turned out to be a serial murderer, was raised, in a religious household, two parents and everything. But again,
That is how he came up.
yes, that turned out to be like that. So yeah.
I think most of the times, not every parent have the opportunity to be able to, raise their children by themselves. Some have to work, others don't have the means to take the kids to crèche or have, like a nanny also to take care of the children. So their option is taking the children to their parents, other family members to help in raising these children. And I believe that those who were fortunate enough to be in the lives of their children, to be able to raise their own children, good for them, good for them. But not everybody was fortunate or is fortunate enough to have that opportunity to raise their own children. So we're not saying that parents that were not able to or are not able to raise their own children, there is something wrong with that. That's not what we're saying.
No, not at all.
Yeah, we're just trying to analyze, you know, the effect of having to raise your own child to instill the kind of values that you, the parents, want to instill in your children. I mean, that parents of yours that will be raising your children, they have been raised by someone else, you know, and how were they raised? You know, because the way they were raised, that's how they are going to raise your child.
Yes, of course.
And think for a second that you are in the 21st century. You know, things have changed from what our grandparents and great grandparents knew and how they were raised. You know, so currently a lot of things have changed. How are we incorporating this modern society that we find ourselves in raising our children?
Yes, you know, to add to what you're saying here, I'm going to be very blatant.
Yeah.
Here. I'm going to be very direct as well. I will say that in Africa, we as African, you know, people of color, melanated people across the world, and this is not a religious statement, this is not a sin statement, this is just my perspective. We are not taking seriously to raising the generation that will have to take over from us. You know, I've just distantiated myself from saying our children because, you know, your kid can also be mine, you know. And, you know, so
a child is raised by the whole
exactly,
community.
so you know that's how it is. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying that we are not taking it seriously. You know, we tend to you know, overlook these very important
aspects of
exactly,
raising children.
you know, because remember, you know, 10, 20, 30 years from now, it's going to be a whole different demography. You know, it's going to be people that, you know, you saw growing up that will be in control, in power and stuff. But how are we molding them? We are not taking it seriously. You know, when you go to China, for instance, the children are trained from young age and molded into the kind of citizen that the country needs to have for the future. The very same thing with Japan, you know, where children, I mean, they get them to play with toys that are like, this is a doctor, you know, yes, exactly. So they want to mold that future generation right there and then, so that, you know, whenever they're not there, these ones can just take over.
Exactly.
With us, it's sorry to say, that's what I'm saying, you know, we don't take that very seriously. We think that, or we believe that, you know, yes, just being present is enough, or paying for the fees is enough, or doing this is enough, but you have to cover every single aspect of raising.
And that's where we get it wrong, you know?
I think so. I think we do get it wrong because, you know, I met a man in Ghana there, you know, so the guy was actually, he's well off, but he never sees his children. Never sees his children. The children are raised by the wife. And so I was just speaking to him and saying, okay, so, but what about your kids? How are your kids? You know, he tells me, oh, my kid, I pay for the fees, I pay for the schools, and I pay for that. But I say, a child needs more than that. You know, you can't just arrogantly boast to say that you pay for things, but they need guidance, you know, they need love, they need all these things, and they need to understand what you expect of them or what you want them to become. Exactly. So we don't take that quite seriously, and I think that's where we're failing as a continent and as a people. You know, we are really being lagging behind because we don't form that. We don't even form a generation that will break the mold. You know, to say that okay, I don't want you to be this. I want you to be that. And,
it's not about imposing your own beliefs and the kind of career that you want the child to be. It's not about that, you know. But I believe that a society without guidance, raising children without some kind of, you know, guidance, it's bound to
it is bound to fail. This is why we have high crime rates, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, when somebody does not know where his property and his rights end,
Mm.
easily goes and infringe onto the right
Of others.
of others. And you know, these are basic things that you learn at home. You know, in the society, you get to watch this. But when there is no garde-fou, as they call it in French, like,
Yeah.
you know, to protect you and prevent you from being over, then you feel like everything is allowed. And you know, I have to say, because I'm looking at also thinking of my upbringing, is you know, you also have to teach kids notion of responsibility. It's quite important. We were raised in a very, my father was very strict. He was a strict man.
Yeah.
He was like, he makes an arrow, a straight arrow look like a circle, basically. So,
How so?
well, he was very strict. He was extremely,
Wow.
extremely strict. But I like that part. You know,
Okay.
growing up, I never got to see that way. You know, but you know, I'll give you an example. For instance, I think I was still in my early teen years when I would go, let's say, 12, 13 years old, and he will enter into the car. For instance, you see the municipality bill and stuff like that. The bill comes. Then we get into the car with him. We drive. You know, it's holiday time, right?
Yeah.
We drive. He has to do his things. He has to go on his errands. But he dropped me at the municipality. Says, "Here's the money. Here's the invoice.
Go and make the
Go
payments.
make the payment." I don't know how it's done. I have no idea.
You will figure it out when
You know
you
what I'm
get
saying? So, you know, at that point, you don't really know what is going on. Like, you can go inside and.
Because he hates me that much to push me into.
Yes, I would rather be playing. I would rather be doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I walk into the municipality and then I ask around and then I'm showing the queue and then here is the 13-year-old standing
Yeah, yeah.
with his little money and then the invoice and then he's about to pay and then I go and I pay and then
Yeah.
after that I go home. Little
That
did I
builds
know-
your confidence.
Yes.
You know?
Little did I know that was me being taught about life, about like the reality of life. And it was in a joking way. It was
Yeah.
not, you know, it was in a joking
Yeah.
way. And as I grew up, mind you, I've never, I won't say never, yeah, never ever missed a payment.
Yeah.
Never ever missed a payment.
So you were taught at a very young age
You know what I'm saying?
how to do this.
How to do these things. And sometimes I would pay when we were paying. He would tell me pay all. Let's say for instance it's 150
Yeah.
and well he gives me 200, he said pay all. So you pay 250 goes
Extra.
to the, you know?
Mhm.
So it was that and then you know that's where I learned. I'm like, oh, this is financial literacy.
Yeah.
So whenever you can pay, you pay in full and then you pay in advance. Then you know you can relax. So it's things like that, you know, like the little things. He will take you to this place and then he will tell you, okay, this is what I need you to do and this is what I'm expecting the outcome to be. You figure it out. You have to figure it out. But you know, you end up doing it, but you are learning. This man is actually impressing values in your mind
Yeah.
as a teenager, because remember what you learn in your younger age becomes a routine as you grow up,
Exactly.
you know. And mind you, then I went back a few years, you know, to where I was raised, which is in the Congo. Out of curiosity, I was like, let me pass into my old neighborhood and see what was happening. I was shocked to see that amongst the very few that did well. Well, you can't compare yourself because success is relative. But you look at what the friends then were
What you
doing
left
and what they
behind.
have become,
Yeah.
and then you look at yourself and you be like, yeah, I did not turn like them. I think maybe because you know there was a different kind of vision behind my father's raising me, and I think that's what we need as parents. As adults, as grown up, you don't need to be a parent to take care of children. You know, you have kids in your community. How do you get involved into making sure that these kids become, you know,
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
I
Yeah.
remember growing up, it's almost like the whole community
Mm.
participated in raising the children in the community.
Yeah.
You know, with corporal punishment, it's almost like we were. I personally did not experience corporal punishment, right? But I knew not that I was,
Perfect.
yes, which I
You
say
are.
I was,
Yeah.
I was, but yeah.
Exemplary.
I led an exemplary life,
Okay.
honestly. And I remember some of my cousins, their parents would be like, why can't you be like this child? And they experienced, whipping and other forms of discipline.
Yeah.
What type of discipline growing up did you experience?
Okay, coming back to what you're saying
Yeah.
there, that children. Before I answer,
Mm.
obviously, that you have to be like this one, you have to be like this. I think I could be wrong. I'm not a psychologist,
Yeah.
but this is also what affects the self-esteem of children because then they are not good enough.
Exactly.
You see, and I think also I know it might come from a maybe loving heart, but you can't compare your child
with another child. Exactly.
Because then you are literally saying that that child is
It's
better
better
than
than
you,
you,
and whether you like it or not, that's how it's taken. So
which
you want
affects their self-esteem.
which affects
Yeah.
your self-esteem because then you always compare
Yeah.
children to that, and I think it's a very wrong way of
Of raising children.
raising children because remember they are incredibly smart human beings. They are very smart.
And I know that comes from a place of frustration sometimes for the parents because imagine a parent, a single parent, trying to raise a young daughter, and every single time it's almost like she has to go around looking for this child to do her homework, to do his homework, and it's almost like it's a build up. So then when they see other children doing better than their children, what goes through their mind is, why can't my child be like this child?
Well, I think
Still wrong though.
it is wrong, but already your child cannot be like that child because they are two different
People, yeah.
two different identities, two different characters,
Yeah.
like completely different. They are different.
Yeah.
They have nothing in common. So you cannot expect your child, who, as you say now single parent, right?
Yeah, single parents.
You can't expect the child to react to life as maybe somebody who's being raised by a nun or by a couple. You can't expect that. Although there can be some conformity somewhere, but the setup is completely different.
Yeah.
So I think what you have to do is you have to set out what you want and you expect of them, and you need to make sure that they follow that.
Yeah.
And if you feel that there is a cycle somewhere with you that is making them behave that way, you have to break the cycle. And I know sometimes we cannot be all, you cannot be all to everybody of your children.
Yeah.
But you can also maybe use references like like role model, for instance, of your community. Not to say that I want to this person is better than you, but
No, I mean now children look up to other people.
Yes,
so
exactly.
if you see that this particular person is your child looks up to that person, maybe you can use that person as it's a way of mentoring your child as well.
It is. And I think you have to look in that direction. But again, the children are so smart that remember, you think that you are smart, but they are smarter than you because
sometimes they know things that we have actually not really paid attention to.
Yeah, and they get to figure things out, and you are quicker. So use that, and you can impress on that. Make sure that they learn from that. And I know I can tell you that when they grow, hardly will they go wrong. So.
And what I've realized is most parents blame themselves. For how their kids are turning up, like, oh, it's my fault, if the child does something wrong, maybe I did not raise the child properly, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Do you think we as a society or we as parents, we directing the blame of how our children turn up in the right direction.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying is you want to know whether we are directing the blame
Yeah.
or we are taking the
Why
blame.
do parents blame themselves?
Some do with reason or without, but again, it's your child. So whether you like it or not, the responsibility is yours.
Falls on you.
So you feel responsible for whatever action you make.
Yeah.
Although you give birth to a child, but you don't give birth to a heart, or a mind. So you have a mind of their own, and also there is an element of peer pressure at play. So you can't always blame yourself for what happens to them, but you have to take also responsibility to make sure that some things are just not part of their life. Like
Like,
So-
things like what?
I'll give you an example. So again, from my father, my late father, if you met with him, he will tell you, he knows me and he knows my weaknesses and my strength. He will tell you, if you want this thing done, he will do it. By he refers to me.
Yeah.
He knows that this he will do it.
Okay.
Go see him.
Out
No,
of how
these-
many children?
No, well, every child has his own, brought up his own way, strength. But he will tell you, like for instance, nobody
If
is
you
a
want
thief in the
something,
house. You get what I'm
okay.
saying? Nobody, you can leave $1
Yeah.
million on the table in the
And
house.
you come back to find
You
it.
will come back to find it because he knows how he's raised this.
I think that's also something that I find quite daunting in our society today.
Mhm.
That kids don't know how to, let's say, see something and not touch it.
Yes, but I think this one goes even beyond kids.
Mm.
This goes beyond kids. It goes to, look at African politicians, for
Yeah.
instance. Somebody who's at the top. He was poor, he's now a president. It takes everything.
Where
he has
does that?
houses.
Okay, so
So it's not
that still stem from the way kids are.
upbringing,
Yeah.
yes, upbringing, but again, it's a broader thing in a society to
Mm.
say, okay, you don't need this. This is not for you.
Yeah.
All right, you've already got a textbook.
Mm.
You don't need an extra textbook.
Mm.
This is what you need. You do your homework. You do everything here. You don't need to take that because it does not belong to you. Like stuff like that. But it goes beyond. Even parents do that. And remember, kids are just looking and observing.
Yeah.
Checking. This is why we have corruption. We have bribe. We have all these things happening in society because you have to teach them to not be entitled.
And what do you think of children that ask permission for everything they do? Let's say they want food from the fridge. They ask, can I have this? Even to have juice from the fridge, they ask for it. Do you think they've been raised to be independent, to make decisions for themselves? Or do you think they just...
That's a very interesting perspective.
Yeah.
And you have to raise them with what you expect
Yeah.
of them, but you also don't want to have subservient. You're grown up, like who have to always ask for everything. You have to have them have the confidence
Yeah.
to say, okay, I'm taking the juice in the fridge because it belongs to us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have a sip or I'm gonna have a glass because everybody has to take. So things like that. But you don't want them to be
Dependent
dependent.
on
They
making
have to
decisions.
be exactly. They have to be able
Yeah.
to make sound decision and say, I can't have this because
This and that, or I
This
can
and that,
have
yes.
this
And
because
I
it's
cannot-
been made available.
exactly, or I have to wait and then be given, for instance, money for this. I cannot go and take money. If I need money for this, I can ask, but I can go and take this money because it's my savings. You know what I'm saying? It's stuff like that. So you have to teach them that. And one thing I would say is we let, I said it before, we're not raising our children seriously. But the second worst thing that we do in Africa is we let others teach our children. When I say others, I mean we let the TV teach the kids. We let the peer pressure teach the kids. We let. But we ourselves, are not, teaching them. And that is a very big problem. And this is me again, when you go to, for instance, because I've spent time, I really have spent time. When you travel and then you go to different places and you learn things. When you go to, for instance, I give you an example here, you go to an Arab household, you know, you find a man, 4 or 5 wives under one roof. Alright? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. And then 10, 20 kids. Right? 20 children. Or let's say 5. For argument's sake. But let me just think about an Arab household. When you go into the household and you spend time there, you observe how they raise their kids. There is one thing that I saw that it shook me, but it's an element that I picked up everywhere I went. The TV in most cases is off.
Okay.
Right? The
Okay.
television is off.
Yeah.
Because they're very conscious of what they
Children
want.
watch. Okay.
Very conscious. It has to be, whether they're Islamic or not, but it has to be a certain kind of program. But I realized that, most of them, like the Arabs, are good with trading. They love trading and stuff. So you go into the house, they are doing bookkeeping. Or they are,
And are these children involved in
the children are involved. They are involved. For instance, your father owns a shop somewhere, and sometimes you go with him to the shop. That's what they do. You find that young Arabs are accompanying their parents wherever they go. They are learning the crafts. They are learning how to trade and how to do that. When they come home, they are also involved in saying, okay, this is how you do this is how you do this is how you balance the book and stuff like that. When the man goes or is late, the children are able to take care of themselves and they know how to run things. No TV involved.
Yeah.
You go, for instance, into a Jewish family. Again, I saw the same thing. In some houses, there is no TV. There's a small little TV in the man's office, in his office in the house.
Probably for news.
Stuff like that, But you come to the living room instead of the TV. It's a library. Books upon books upon books upon books.
To read when you're bored.
Exactly. And the books are intended to shape your mind and perception of the world a certain way that this is what we want from you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And these kids grow up like that, and then when they grow up, they become, lawyers, or they become something, that was designed by what they read in a household. When you go to China, same thing. Industrious people. Some of these folks are running factories in their house.
Do you think these kids are not being allowed to be kids?
They are allowed to be kids, but they are also prepared to become,
For the future.
Adults. Because obviously, when you teach your child with money, it's a game. To them, it is a game, But it is a game that they're learning to play. And when they become adults, the game is real. And then, so they are allowed to be children, but, their mind is already being shaped and prepared like that. Same thing, when you go to China, you see how they live in their household. These guys are brainstorming, the children, 5, 6, 7 years old, coming up with projects and stuff like that. It's like amazing. But when you come to Africa, you go into a household.
That's what I want to ask you. What do you think is lacking in the African society in terms of?
I say we're not intentional. We are not intentional in raising kids because you come into an African household, the TV is on 24/7. What are they watching? This is watching. They are being raised by TV or by social media or something.
Yeah.
So, that is sadly what I've realized, and we're going wrong there.
How has that impacted the kind of adults we have in our society right now?
Well, I would say, Yes, of course, we have exceptional human beings in African communities. We have people who are striving for the best. But the perception, the expectation is a bit low.
Okay, and we can do better.
We definitely can do better. Looking at what others are doing, as Africa, we can definitely do better, and we have to do better. Because we celebrate somebody who's like 25 and then was able to make a bicycle, which is not bad. But I mean, this is something that somebody in China has at 8, 4, 5, 6.
But I think with the kind of parents we have right now, people are always busy trying to put bread and butter on the table for these children to, survive. So someone might say, like, how do I go to work and come back home and still engage these children when I have to cook, I have to clean, I have to do this, and I have to do that? How do we balance?
I think you have to be intentional first.
Okay.
What really matters to you the most? Do you want a greater legacy, or do you want a satisfied child?
Yeah. But you have to be able to provide for these kids.
Of course, you have to be able to provide for them, but you have to also be able to mold what you expect of them, because that is the most important one.
Yeah.
But you can provide for them, but if they don't know how to provide for themselves, when you are no longer there, they will turn into alternative.
Which means there has to be a balance between
you have to find balance.
molding them for the future and trying to fend for them.
You have to have a balance. It's imperative. There is no two ways about it. And you just have to, I know sometimes the time might be limited, the time you spend with them, but the little time that you have with them, whether it's like 5, 10 minutes, they need to download something from you. Something that they will get and it will shape them.
And I think sometimes it's just very little things, maybe taking a walk with them for 5 minutes, playing with them in the garden outside. I think it's...
it's things like that. And, I give you I was raised in a French household, so I give you an example. When we had French at school, I could be absent for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And it actually had happened several times that, I was maybe sick or something. And then I come back and then there was a test, a French test. I ace it.
You speak French every single day.
You know what I'm saying? I just ace it, A+, that's it. And I don't even know why do we have to go through what we have to go through. It's something that I live on
Why
a
do
daily.
you have to go to school?
I live on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I told you my mother is from the medical field. And just spending time with her, I can diagnose you. I could diagnose and say, okay, no, you have this, and this is what you have to take. This is it. Just based on spending time with her, and that is it. And when we say, like, the little time you spend with them, they learn. And it's very true because, just be intentional, give them a little bit of time, and they learn. And then when they learn, it sticks with them forever. So, you have to be intentional and
trying to strike a balance between.
It's imperative. And they will learn. They learn very fast. So, what took you 50 years to learn, your child will learn it in a second. They look at you and they go, oh, it's easy, papa. But it took you time to learn. So, take time and teach them. And they will be better.
It's amazing how much of an insight, I've gotten from just talking to you today. And it's been really insightful for me personally,
Okay.
I've been around quite a lot of children and so I really appreciate the discussion we just had.
Thank you.
And hopefully you guys also got something out of it. And until next time, you will see us again. Until next time, you will hear from us again. Take care.
All right.